Hopefully, welcome back. If not, welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy. I am Kalisa, and the whole point of this podcast is to talk about mostly romantasy books, but more just kind of following general interests, general open-mindedness, general curiosities around the book world. And today I am very excited to be joined by two lovely ladies. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves and then talk about your podcast and what you guys talk about.
Yeah, I'm Bri.
I'm Alli.
And our podcast is Offscript.
Yeah, that's almost our intro right there.
Brilliant.
We talk about books that have been adapted into movies or TV shows. And then we basically read the book, watch the movie or show, and then we compare the two on our podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. There have been some that have been surprising and some that were like, wow, they nailed it. And
there have been many that they have not nailed it.
No, yes.
Fair.
Like the TV show nailed it. Like, oh, you tried.
Great effort. Yeah.
But yeah.
Awesome.
We're excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So we just like right before this, we filmed an episode for their channel that you 100% should go check out. This is a book that I have always wanted to talk about and never talked about to anyone. So we talked about Uglies because the movie just recently came out, despite it being like somewhat of an older book, I would say.
Yeah.
And it was a really great conversation. I had a lot of fun. So
it was a blast. I loved it.
Thank you for being on with us.
Yeah,
and suggesting
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so then naturally, I was like, we should also film an episode and just, I will say I'm one that I'm not I always say I'm not very great at watching TV. I kind of like need a support buddy that'll have me sit and focus. Otherwise, I'm like, ooh, let me crochet. Let me do this craft. Let me go do this real quick. And then I'm not like watching the movie. But I tend to be a firm like, once I've read the book, the movie can never quite compare. It's two different amounts of like the content you get. So I just wanted to hear in all of your guys's experience and like everything that you've talked about to talk about some of the things that movie adaptations get right and some of the things they tend to get not so right. So kind of like free for all, feel free to jump in wherever like feels good. But if we want to start with like what are some book to movie adaptations that like missed the mark or the audience didn't really care for?
Take it away, Bri.
So remember in our episode that I told you about Allegiant?
Oh man.
Oh
You
yeah.
spoke to the author about it and everything.
Oh my gosh. I went to Comic-Con and it was after we had covered Divergent and I went to Veronica Roth's panel and I was too nervous and my boyfriend's amazing and he went and asked my question for me and I wanted to know how she felt about what they did to those books and movies adaptations. She literally laughed. She laughed at the start. He asked the question and she laughed. And I had never felt more justified in my feelings over this adaptation. So when Divergent first came out, I was so excited. I was like, this was a book where a college friend had recommended it to me before Allegiant came out. So I got the two books, started reading them. The book Allegiant came out right as I was like in the middle of Insurgent, and I was like, ooh, yes, this is gonna be good. Found out they were getting made into movies. I was like, yes, this is even better. Divergent was okay. It wasn't great, but adaptations tend to do that. So I was like, all right, I'll give it to you. And then Insurgent, they were like, here's your story. We could make it better and make it our story. And then Allegiant, oh my God, my favorite. Okay, it's really hard because in Allegiant, the book, spoiler everyone, Tris dies. And to me, that's the best part because her arc is complete. So then they go into Allegiant. Let me also remind you that Allegiant is part 1 we still have yet to get a part 2 or the TV show we were promised after the movie.
Like 10 years ago.
Yeah. They realized how badly they screwed up, but and the movie ends with Triss still alive. And I remember because I kept trying to figure out, I was like, where are they going to split this book into a second half? And I was like, oh, they're probably going to like get to this part. And I remember as I'm watching it, I was like, oh, I would split it and we're still going. And then I was like, oh, we are doing the whole book right now. And like you basically want to figure out how you're going to save all of the factions and like everything that the books like, oh,
I can't even. You can go on and on. You should go. That's an interesting episode to listen to.
I feel it. I will. That will be on my list. Absolutely to check out.
Yeah, that's literally like I think my top number one.
They screwed it up.
Screwed it up too bad. I was like, I could go on and on about that one.
I'm just looking at the list of everything we've done already. So
I know.
I can remind myself.
Here's another thing. We like it's so crazy for us because we've now been doing it for 4 years. So that's like, yeah. So we sometimes need little like, which ones?
Wait, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that.
So,
I don't need a reminder for Allegiant. I've felt this way
to start.
Was born. Yeah, like that one.
For doing good, it's actually, this has been interesting. I've noticed that TV shows are hit or miss. Like you would think, okay, a TV show, it can they have, probably 3-4 times as long as with a movie, so they should get all the details. A lot of the time that's true. Like with Good Omens.
Oh, that one was good.
They nailed it. So that was a really good one. But then we did
Looking for Alaska,
and that was
that's
John Green.
Favorite John Green book.
And that was just I don't know what happened.
They like threw in 3 episodes that were not in the book. Like it was just their own like, oh, let's give us more character development. I don't know what they were thinking.
But then on the same, we're just gonna go on and on and on. Sorry. On the same path with that, we did Brokeback Mountain. And Brokeback Mountain
is the one that I wanted to talk about for good ones.
It's a 1-hour book. Look, I do audiobooks. So it's like 60 pages. And so
it's like the thinnest little book you've ever seen. It's so tiny.
Yeah. And so then we were like, well, that's interesting how they're going to make that a 2-hour movie.
I was like, they're going to screw this up so bad.
They're going to put such random stuff in there.
It is the perfect adaptation I've ever covered. In my opinion.
Because with it, they have every bit of the book, but then the parts that they add in are just details on the characters that like they kind of assumed or like they said really quickly like, oh, in the past they've done this, and then we got like the past scene of like, oh, that happened.
I see.
And so like it was really good.
And like the parts, because it's again a very short book, so like when they're in the mountains, we would get just like maybe a paragraph explaining what they did, whereas in the movie we got to see them like, ooh, they are like, they have to get on their horse and they have to ride over to the other side of the mountain to herd the sheep in. And I thought that was really good.
It was good. Yeah.
I feel like there's another adaptation that did really bad though.
Really bad?
Yeah. Like Allegiant level bad.
Let me look. I feel like there is. You didn't like Percy Jackson.
Oh my God. There's another one.
Percy Jackson. But I mean, I had seen that one first. I remember. So I had seen it with my husband. He was my boyfriend at the time. And him and his friends loved the Percy Jackson books that came out in high school. Right? High school? Yeah.
Middle school.
No, because I didn't know Cameron in middle school. We saw him in theaters.
No, the books came out in middle school.
Oh, okay.
You're like the movies. Like,
what are you talking about?
Me and Cassidy, our friendship was because of Percy Jackson, and we became friends in middle school. And so I called him my reading buddy because we were in a reading class together. We then bonded over Percy Jackson, and then in high school they got made into movies.
So then I go see it, and I hadn't read it yet. And I'm sitting there like, wow, this is a really good movie. And all I can hear is my boyfriend and like everyone, they're like, this is awful. What the heck? What's going on right there? And so because I had watched it first, and I took until I know I read it in my class. Because I was a teacher before stay-at-home mom, and I did our podcast with my fourth graders. We would read
our podcast
before the podcast. We would read a book, and then I'd show it in class, and I'd have them write a compare and contrast essay. And I want to say I read it before then. I feel like I did. But for sure, it was like 10 years later that I officially read Percy Jackson. And so with that one, with me, it's like the movie's really good and the book's really good, but they don't compare to me. Things. So I don't sit there and be like, wow, the movie really screwed that up, or wow, the book really screwed that up, or changed that, or was different in that aspect, or type of thing. Because I view them as two different stories, because it's like I waited so long in between to see it, which was interesting.
No, Percy Jackson, it screwed up, and then I thought the new TV show was gonna do better. And yeah, we get like the things that the TV show missed, the movie missed, but the TV show also. So my boyfriend is very supportive of this podcast, and I was just watching the TV show to see if they did it good, and I was like, Allie, maybe we could do a mini-sode on it. And in the first half-hour episode, I literally, like 2 minutes into it, I was sitting there going, what the hell are they doing? So much so he paused it and was like, you should get your notebook to write notes. I was like, I didn't want to.
Oh, that is so sweet and supportive, but yeah.
That also reminded me of The Magicians.
Oh yeah.
That's the one we just covered this.
Okay.
You've heard of The Magicians?
I've seen the show, surprisingly, and I have not read the books.
The books. I was just gonna say, you did it how Allie did it. She watched the show first and then went to the books. So the books are very different. They don't have as much detail as the show, but also the show went on its own thing.
Okay.
The show did so much different. So I read the books first.
The books basically follow Quentin the whole time. So we never really get stories with everybody else. And so it felt very slow to me, because I wanted, like, my favorite characters weren't like being followed. I'm like, well, I want to know what happens with Margot, whose name is Janet in the book. I want to know what happens with, Penny and Elliot and all these people. And I didn't get to know.
That's a good point. Everyone was like off doing crazy stuff. I haven't kept up with it, but the parts that I did, sometimes you're like, oh, okay.
So we covered this because this is my boyfriend's, like, he watched the show, loved it, went and read the books, loved the books.
Yeah.
I had thought that he had read the books first. So I was like, although with me and Allie, we have learned that I need to read the books first, because I'm able to keep like the differences in my head better when I do it that way. Whereas if I watch the movie first and then read the book.
Because she takes notes during the movie. Too. So usually if she watches the movie first and then reads the book, she has to go watch the movie again to take the notes.
And then I'm just all over the place and I can't.
Versus if I watch the movie first, then my brain is kind of like set to know, okay, this is sort of what's happening. And it's easier to take notes on, to be like, oh, well, that's not needed at all. Like, that doesn't come up later, and like stuff like that. So that it works for us. But
and I went into Magicians thinking it was his favorite book series. Then found out it's his favorite TV show kind of book series, but he prefers the show more. Whereas me, I'm like, the book was amazing. I loved the book, or the books, so freaking much. But like Allie just said, even though crazy enough, I didn't wait like 10 years in between, the show, it's almost like they're so different that they're two separate things for me. So then I actually enjoy them both. So
Yeah. I will say, being more of an avid reader, I tend to enjoy watching the movie first because then I can consume them as two different things. Like I don't have expectations because
Okay.
once I've read the book and I tend to like more cases than not, I'm going to enjoy the book. And then I feel like when you condense it down into a movie, one, usually things are changed or they've had to cut stuff out unless we
Yeah.
want, 8-hour long movies or something like that. So,
I do.
I, yeah, no, exactly. So I don't like the like disappointment. I've
Yeah.
been like lately, I've been really wanting to. I noted like Harry Potter, I think as a franchise worked so well because one, being so successful as books, like another element that I think tends to play a lot in how the adaptations work is budget.
Yeah.
Especially being a fantasy reader, because if it's
That's
not done
true.
right, it looks weird. And then you're taken out of it. And I'm like, this is not my thing. So I think Harry Potter being such a wildly successful franchise to the fact that it could be done well, even though I've been really wanting to reread it because I just randomly remembered like the whole side plot of Hermione wanting to like free the elves and knitting for the elves and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
it's been a
Yeah.
long time since I've read them. So like I thought in that case where you could kind of almost overlook things being cut out is when it's done so well that you're like, oh wait, but this is great too. But noting they tend to be like two separate things. And we just talked about
Yeah.
that with Uglies as well, where it had been so long since I read it. I got to essentially consume the movie first.
Yeah.
Like I had a rough idea of how things would play out, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And then I reread the book, and then I also had to rewatch the movie again because I was like, oh, now I know what's going on. And then I
Yeah.
was like, wait, this didn't
This is
happen. What the heck? Like, this is not how it goes. And what are you doing and why?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I definitely get that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other one um was Vampire Academy.
Oh.
Oh, I haven't touched that one yet
Yeah, so
because
Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead was like my series. That was my
yeah.
number one series in my like early teenage years. I just loved it. She did kind of a spin-off with some side characters. I ate it all up and it was delicious. Loved it. And then they made it into a movie and it like gave high school mean girl vibes, but it's like this vampire, like you get a badass main character. And it was giving like kind of this weird, and I think that was the kind of crowd they were trying to market it to.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even tell you what happened in the movie, but I did not like it. I couldn't even tell you why,
Yeah.
unless like I went and
Rewatched
reanalyzed to
it.
have
Yeah.
like an actual
Yeah.
argument other than just my emotional, no, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's like that sometimes. But
Oh, it is. Yeah. That's Allegiant. I had only seen Allegiant in the theaters and then I had to rewatch it for us. And like 10 minutes in, I was like, this is why I haven't watched it again.
I just don't like it.
yeah, I feel like you need to wear like a heart monitor so we can see like as your anger level rises and you're like, this isn't how it goes.
Oh
Oh,
my goodness.
yeah.
Oh, I would do that.
Yeah, you would.
Are there any other that come to mind as far as and it doesn't have to be like overall, it can even be like specific elements that were either done well or done not great.
Okay. One that was not done great was Bullet Train. I didn't like
Oh
this
yeah.
one. So I isn't it called something else? It's the book is
It's
something else.
the something about Ladybug.
Something okay. The book is a Japanese book, and so it's called something else. But the movie Bullet Train with Brad Pitt and everything. But the book it follows this guy. It's this whole like how would you describe it? What's the plot?
it's still a oh great. Why can I like it's spy. It's a spy book.
And
yeah.
So basically though, my favorite thing of books and movies are the puzzle pieces that come together. Like they've mentioned this one thing like 400 pages ago and it comes up at the end type of thing. And that book was full of it. Like this is not my type of like I'm not a big like spy murder type of like books like it, but it was enjoyable to read. And then when it all came together, it was like, oh my gosh, it was like all the puzzle pieces. It was so fun. Movie just went full on action spy movie and didn't do any of the fun little puzzle pieces parts, and I was so disappointed because the movie was fun. It was an action comedy movie, and it was funny, it was fun to watch. But the point of this book that I loved was the puzzle pieces, and it did not have them. And we've noticed that for a lot of movies, they hold your hand through it.
That's my least favorite part about films. I'm like, because they're trying to get everyone to come into a theater, right? So if you're someone who doesn't go and see movies, you most likely need someone to hold your hand and to be like, guess what? This is happening. Whereas I think that they should have more faith in their audience.
I agree, because then it's like movies like it was Inception that like they didn't hold your hand at all
in the water.
Good luck.
They're like by the end of the movie you still are like, wait, what just happened? But it was so successful. And so I'm like, I wish they did that, like followed the book, follow the script.
That so one thing we've noticed, which is funny because the questions at the end that we ask now have come from like me telling people like, oh, I have this podcast, this is what we do, and them saying, well, obviously book and movies, like they're going to be different. What I look for when I'm watching is if the story's the same, if the character's the same, or like things like that. And one thing I've realized is if any of the characters are written completely different from how they are in the book, that changes a lot because it changes the story. Because like if the sister who's supposed to be the best friend turns into the sister who's like the arch enemy who becomes a best friend, where was that storyline in the book? That was never there. So I think how the writers choose to write characters plays a big part in it, for sure.
That takes me back to Harry Potter again, the big joke around, Dumbledore saying calmly in the movie, he's like, Harry Potter, did you put your name in the goblet of fire? But
I'm reading that one with my daughter right now, and I'm just about to that part, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, no, classic. And I feel that too, because like I said, I read mostly fantasy, and that's also kind of the joke in fantasy books is that there tends to be such intense world building in the first little bit that sometimes as a reader, I'm like, oh, hang on, like Crescent City, good Lord, I didn't know what was happening.
And I love that book. It's such a good book.
And I was like, you know what, because as you're reading, you're like, I'm going to figure this out. If it's important, it'll be mentioned again. I will have the like foundation and to build it up. And I think that can sometimes be the downfall with movies being visual as well. Because if it's just shown real quick or something, it might be slightly different what we interpret from it rather than seeing words, which can be a little bit more specific of like what exactly we're seeing, Yeah,
I agree.
Another one that popped up is actually It Ends With Us, and I haven't read the book. I will not read the book just because I don't do that genre. Like that's not my cup of tea. But I will say, like watching the movie, having no concept, I just knew that it was like a popular name out there. Watching the movie, one thing that I was really surprised that I think movies can offer that books can't is when it comes to like I've heard it talked about a few times, but I don't think I've necessarily read kind of like an unreliable narrator, a situation where it looks one way but it's different. And I think in It Ends With Us, where we are seeing these actions unfold in a specific way, and then towards the end, when it clicks that she's being abused, you see those same scenes in a completely different light. And I thought that was so impactful and like a beautiful way to do that, that my brain would not have facilitated. Like, I don't know how you would do something like that as brilliantly in a book necessarily.
It was actually done.
They did not do it in the book. That's why. She in the book, she realized at each moment that it was happening.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
in the movie, they made it not.
She would sit there and be like, oh, he just did this to me, but he said he's going to change. It's fine.
In the movie. And then in the book, though, she really battled with herself, being like, I need to leave. I need to leave.
Yeah.
And then but then, typical, well, no, maybe he'll do this. Maybe he'll do this. But so that was actually a big change. But yeah, you're right. I like how they took that and flipped it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in your opinions, what are the elements that make a good kind of book to movie adaptation?
Characters, the writing of the characters.
If you don't have a likable character, I'm not gonna like the movie
like it at
or
all.
the book.
Yeah.
So but I've seen ones. I can't think of which one it was.
There was one where the character was horrible and you liked it.
No, I was gonna say I've seen one where they switched it, where it was really not a good character either in the book or the movie, but they made them likable.
Oh, Alaska.
No, I didn't like her in either of those.
Wasn't it Pudge?
No.
Oh.
I don't know, but like if I just have to have a likable character. I don't care if they change the character if they're unlikable and then I make them likable. Unless they're supposed to be unlikable for like they're the villain of the. But if you just because that's the character,
the other
I don't enjoy it.
Thing,
but that's just me.
The other thing that we always talk about too in our podcast is adaptations that do umbrellas.
Yes.
Like if you have the umbrella, which is basically like the story is there, then
some of the details are there, but then here it comes raining all new details or like made up stuff, or they lost a bunch of stuff, they fell off the umbrella, or that's so as long as
you've got the
umbrella is there, because
I guess depending on the story too, because like
look up what we've done. Because I know there's one that we're like we're forgetting.
No, that's the Magicians.
No,
the Magicians, we literally were like, the umbrella was not there, it was raindrops, it was what was there, like
they gave you a few, like they're like, here you go. That should be fine, right?
Exactly. Right. Oh my gosh,
what one are you thinking of?
I have no idea.
That did good with the umbrella?
No.
Oh, that did bad with it?
I don't know where my brain was going. I don't know.
Fair. And that was one point that I was gonna mention as well, that I think when it comes to movies and I think even the way that like book talk and the book community has grown and the way that we're able to kind of share our thoughts, like people really latch on to certain things. And I know it's impossible to the hard part is creating this movie in the visions, right? Because all of us are having our own subjective experiences of reading these. I can tell you so many times where my thing is I completely ignore what people look like. It's always been a thing that I've done, but it just does not.
I create their own looks in my head, and then I'll be talking to her and be like, it's this person that looks like this, and she's like, no, they have blonde hair.
No, absolutely. No. I'll be like almost towards the end of a book, and they'll be like, and his beautiful golden hair pulled back into a ponytail, and I'm like, what? No, first of all. Yeah, but there are so like there is that element, right, where we're kind of essentially kind of creating to some degree, however subconscious, of like what we like about these books. But also I think adding those little moments for me, like the beautiful part of reading is that sometimes you do get beautiful little moments that add so much to like maybe a character that kind of don't necessarily mean anything in the grander scheme of story, but it makes them like human. Like you feel like you know this person, right? You're close to them. You know these things about them. So like kind of sprinkling in some of those details like we talked about again for Uglies. Her journey to the smoke was so quick versus in the book, it was such a long drawn out thing. And we saw her struggle. She was getting sunburn and, she had to wait for the hoverboard to like fold up and push out all the water and because of like the morning dew and all the spag bowl and everything. So like that was such an important part of the story that cut condensed down to like what 5-10 minutes of a movie, so it's tough to that I don't envy anybody who has to make the calls of like what to cut and keep because I'd be like, guys, we have to keep everything, like that's just how it's gonna go.
Yep. Yeah, I know.
I'd be curious, do you know if there's anything like that has been intentionally created to almost follow it like exactly? Has no one like attempted that or yeah, okay.
Well, I don't know if they've done, I mean, I would think it'd be intentionally, but it was, so we mentioned Good Omens. We had almost nothing wrong with it.
That's because which one's that? Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett, who was one of the authors of that book, he literally would not give any studio the rights unless they did it verbatim almost.
Oh,
and
I love
so
that.
he passed away before it was a show. And so like obviously all the studios were like, ooh, it's ours now. But his co-writer, Neil Gaiman, was like, no, this was Terry's, like this was his vision. This is how we're gonna do it. And so then when they got everyone on board, like actors and stuff, then they all also were like, well, this is how it is in the book, and this is what Terry Pratchett wanted. So we can't make the changes that you keep wanting to try and change.
Another one was 5 Feet Apart. They did really good.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I feel like what was the John Green one that I like?
The Fault in Our Stars.
They do pretty good. There were some things that were off, but like for the most part, that one was pretty good too. So there are them out there that it's like, oh my gosh, like it's
a diamond in the rough.
It's like it's Bri's joke. She's like, I'm just gonna keep saying that happened, and because like I go over the whole book, and then she'll blurt in
say what the movie did. But my favorite episodes are her least favorite episodes because she'll sit there rambling.
Talking.
That happens.
Yep.
That
correct.
Happens.
Continue.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Are there any movies and here we go. Are there any books that you would love to see as movies/shows? Anything like that?
I just read, I didn't just read it. It was like a year ago, but The Chemist by Stephanie Meyer. Oh my God, if I could get that as a, I would say movie, but now I'm like maybe TV show. Because that one has a lot of tiny details that I would want. And I know that they would cut it out of the movie. No, this question is all for me. You don't read.
I mean, okay, I started this one. It's what is it called? It's like Tale of the Tally thing. I can never remember it. It's one of those books that I found at like a crafts like store, like a farmer's market type of thing, and was sold on how pretty the artwork was on it. And so I got it and I love the story, and it's one that I've started so many times, but my life is just so insane that's why I do audiobooks. I just because I can do them and then do life. So every time I start it, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, okay, I'm gonna read every single night and I need to read this. And then life gets crazy and I am dead that day. And I was like, I just want to lay down and go to sleep. I just want to watch TV. I just want to do like not make my brain work. So I don't end up watching it. But every time I restart this book, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I really want it movies. I have an excuse that I have to do it for the podcast.
There you go. I see
Let
it.
me see if I can figure out what it is. You go.
I thought of another one. I own Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Oh my gosh. I freaking loved that book. I like only read it because an old coworker had recommended it to me. I had bought the book, met the author at Comic-Con and had him sign it. And he was really great with the fans. And I wish I had read the book before I had him sign, because he was like, do you have any questions for me? And he was wanting to talk to his fans about the book. And I was just like, nope. Bye. Give me your signature and I'm gone.
Yeah.
And so like a few months after that, I read it and I started it on a flight to go visit my friend in California. And I got halfway through the book. And when I landed, I didn't want to stop reading. I like sat there and read until I had to get out of my seat. And that's a series and I haven't touched the rest of that series. And that's actually one of my like, literally, I told Alli that this season with our books, I'm going to start doing like one of our Offscript books and then a me book.
Okay.
And the next me book I do is going to be the next book in that series, because I loved that first book. And so I would want that as a TV show.
Yeah.
Because there's multiple books, so I don't want them to screw up the movie.
For both of those that you've mentioned, are there any like particular elements or characters or like what about it makes you say like I want to see this come to life?
So Red Rising is one of my all-time favorite books is Ender's Game. And like the first time I read it when I was like 6 or 7, I finished the book and was like, I want to make that into a movie. And then people beat me to it, those jerks. But I know, right? But this book, Red Rising, is essentially Ender's Game mixed with Hunger Games. And there's like revenge in it. And it's just so good. So to me, it's like, again, it's the elements of Ender's Game where when I finished it, I was like, I want to see that come to life, because like you see him doing this thing and like essentially so the Ender's Game part is because your main character is trying to like rank up in this society, like little game thing that's going on. And then it's Hunger Games because there's groups of people that get thrown in, but instead of like 1v1, it's like it's a war essentially. And so you have your each like little battalion. So again, more like Ender's Game, because you've got your little battalion and then you go and you fight each other. And so essentially the government's watching you to be like, ooh, I like you. And I just think that would be so fun to see. I do not know where the story goes. The first book ends with him basically like being so good that they want to take him. And it's the people that he hates too. That's what I love. It's like the people that he's trying to get revenge to. So he's trying to get up higher because, spoiler, they killed his wife or fiance. And so he this whole time is like, I hate you guys. I'm here because I'm trying to get up there so I can kill you. And so I just think that would be so fun. And then The Chemist, I think that Stephanie Meyer catches flack for Twilight, which I also love Twilight. So I'm like, I don't hate her for it, but I think a lot of people were like, oh, her writing's bad. But The Chemist was a really fun and interesting, like, I don't want to say it was a spy, because it wasn't really, they weren't spies, but basically like, no, it was a hit girl, essentially. So she's hired as this hit person to kill this person, doesn't know why she's trying to kill this person, gets to meet them, but also ended up like going with the twin. Like, I think she accidentally, I can't remember, it was a while ago that I read it, but she like went for the wrong dude because he has an exact twin. So then she's like, what the fuck? And then they start like, they talk together, find out all this bad like stuff that's going on. And so I think for me, it's like all the like the twists and the turns. That's what makes it
Mhm.
exciting for me
Mhm.
with that one. That's why I would
Mhm.
want to see that one.
That made me think of The Host because
Yeah.
that is a
Hmm.
book that I absolutely love. Again, I'd never
Yes.
heard many
Hmm.
people like talking about it. I think that was just
Hmm.
maybe like the age of when I read it. Um,
Hmm.
and the movie, I don't like have anything like I think it was done great except for how much they had to cut out because again, it's like
Yep.
a giant book and I was so bummed that like a lot of kind of the like backstory of the aliens of like the different lives
Hmm.
that she's lived and stuff that kind
Yes.
of gets cut out and I think it takes away from some of the like significance of the story as a whole. But
Oh,
I
I
will say
agree.
I
I
was
love the host.
yeah, yeah, it's a good one. Again, I go back to like my younger brain trying to comprehend when she's
Oh yeah.
explaining
I
like
so when I first read it, it was right like I after all the Twilight, hype. And so I was like, ooh, Stephanie
mhm,
Meyer has another book. I'm gonna read it too, and I'm gonna love it just as much. I got bored. I
mhm,
got like two chapters in and I was like, I can't read this. And I put
mhm.
it aside and
Where's
I was like,
Edward? Dang it.
yeah, basically. Give me
Uh,
my vampire.
right.
And so I put it on my shelf and I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna read this again, but
Mhm,
oh well. And then I found out it was getting made into a movie. And
mhm,
I'm typically a purist where I'm like, I gotta read the book first. And so I was like, well, you know that it was hard for you to read it. So like this was like just, ooh, we are announcing that we are doing this. We don't know who we've cast, yada yada. So I was like, I guess I should start it now because it's gonna take me until the movie comes out to finish it. And it was quite a few years in between me putting it down and being like, I'm done with this and picking it back up. And man, when I read it, I just like, I blew through it. And I think it was because it's more of an adult like book, not like super adult, obviously,
mhm.
but definitely it's got themes in it where it's like, I just wanted a love story with an alien because you just given me a love story with a
Right?
werewolf and a
Yeah.
vampire. So I, it was, it's funny to see, like, you know, okay, when I'm younger, I don't like this, but hey, now I love this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of like that's interestingly been one of the themes of conversations lately. I actually just filmed yesterday with a friend of mine and we were talking about pestilence, which is about the four horsemen and the kind
Ooh.
of concept that in the first book we meet pestilence and he looks like a man and yet the kind of the way that it's explained where he comes from or like his whole purpose like he wasn't born he's not human he just looks human and like
Yeah.
even talking about the uglies of like I think that's why I mostly read the fantasy aspect of like how do you convey things that aren't real? Like they're
Yeah.
made up. How do you make sure people are understanding you? Because when they're talking about the host, like some of these worlds where they could live in, she was like, well, we didn't communicate with like words or something, or like everyone was
We
interconnected and
just
stuff
could
like
feel
that.
each
Like,
other's feelings. Yeah.
yeah. And you're like, what? How does this
Oh,
work? So I totally
yeah.
get that, where like when it starts right off the bat, and I'm like, I don't know what this is. Um, yeah, absolutely. I think for me, the two that come to mind first is the whole Sarah J. Maas universe right up there.
Oh,
Well, half
yes.
of it.
Well, so what's funny is I would say A Court of Thorns and Roses, but
Yeah.
that's getting turned into a show. So I'm like, let's
It's
go. I'm
exactly.
I'm hoping that then just trickles into all the rest of her books. Because oh my
It
God, if I could
has
get
to. It has to.
that's what I'm saying. If I could get Crescent City as a TV show, I would be so happy.
Yeah. No, I think it has so much potential because there's so much behind it, but also sometimes that's the downside of like
Yeah.
so many expectations. And we even already kind of saw that with the Crescent City 3 coming out,
Yeah.
where everyone was talking about it and talking about it and guessing and guessing and guessing and expectations. And then they kind of, I think from what I heard, some of the people read it and were like, oh, okay, like it's fine. It's not bad. But like when you
Yeah.
build it up in your head. So
Yeah.
I think I'm taking the opposite approach where I'm almost like expecting it to be bad. So just in case that it's actually good.
I'm expecting it to be horrible because there's so much in those books that I'm like, oh, you're just gonna screw this up so bad, but you best believe the second it drops, I'm gonna be watching it.
And Sarah J. Maas is huge on like dropping little bits that become important later. So like you need to make sure again that those are seen, that they're understood, and not we're just like surprise and everyone's like, what?
Where'd you come from?
What is this? I'm making my friend read ACOTAR and he is not a reader and it's taken like a month to get through the first 19 chapters and I'm like, keep going though, it's getting good, I promise. Like you'll get there. The other one that comes to mind is the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. And I think that one, just because the whole concept is this like I kind of like compare it to like a traveling carnival, right? It's like a traveling magic show that everyone comes to this island. You have to have a ticket and like it's a like choose your own adventure. So some people go just to shop for like magic potions and stuff, and then others are playing to essentially win this like grand prize. And I think it would be so visually appealing, just like all the different locations, the way that they're explained, and you have like ball gowns and dresses and like cool imagery that you can't always trust. The whole idea is like nothing is real. And so the characters are like seeing things, or sometimes they're seeing people, but it's not those people, and you're like, what? So I think that would be like a fun one that you could definitely play with, making it a movie.
If the right person got a hold of it to make it, they could do it good.
Absolutely. We should start a film company that like makes things exactly as they're written.
We're like, okay, we're not making a script, guys. We're just gonna use the book.
No, absolutely. Like essentially, the work is done. We just need to like costuming, locations. So easy. I think we can do it.
Why don't they already do this?
Yes. Yeah. Is there anything else that like pertains to this that's on your mind or?
Let me check my list I've done again. Oh, the book that I had mentioned was Secrets of the Tally by Hallie Fox. That it's just first 5 chapters are very good.
First 5 chapters are great.
Yes.
Rest of the book, I don't know.
Anyway, sorry.
That's a great endorsement though.
Yeah.
I can't wait. We'll have to have an update in like a year to be like, how did the rest of it go? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I know. I feel like there's something I want to say like right at the tip of my head, and I can't think of what it is.
I don't know. No, I'm good.
All right.
Fair. All right. Well, it was absolutely a delight. Do you guys have kind of any idea of like what you guys might be posting in the next few months or like what's coming up?
Oh.
Well, we're just about to start season 6, which is full listener picks. So all the things that we are about to record have been picked by our listeners. And so our first one is The Hobbit.
So I was very excited about.
Yes. And it kind of worked out perfectly because we watch The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings for Christmas every year. And so I didn't even have to go out of my way. I was like, oh, perfect. Okay, I'm doing this anyway. So, but it was, so that'll be our next thing coming out.
And then Uglies.
Yep, and the Uglies will be coming out. And then we got Under the Bridge.
I'm super excited for Under the Bridge. I'm a true crime fanatic. And we had covered I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Was that last year?
Last season.
Last season. And I was really sad about that. And I thought, oh no, I don't like true crime books. I love watching true crime shows. I love listening to true crime podcasts, but I don't like the books. No, I just didn't like that writing style.
Fair.
Because Under the Bridge was requested by one of my best friends, and she had just told me that it was based off of a true story. So I go into this book thinking it's a true story, or knowing it's a true story, not thinking. And I started and I was like, hold on, this is a murder story? And I text her and I was like, you did not tell me this was about murder. And she was like, yeah, that's why I knew you would like it. I was like, girl. And she's like, I also really need you to hurry up because I need someone to talk to about this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah. And so that's our next 3 weeks coming up. And then we just got a lot of fun stuff this season.
I'm excited for Schindler's List. We're covering Schindler's List.
We got Dune going in there.
I'm excited for that one too.
Oh, yeah. I've watched the movie, have not read the book yet.
Same.
I've done either. So.
And I've been told that I will love the book, so I'm really excited.
Okay.
Yeah, we even doing some Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe this season.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Awesome. Do you guys want to let everyone know where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Offscript Podcast 253.
Or you can pretty much just type in Offscript and we'll pop up on
Perfect.
Spotify and
Yeah. Absolutely. I will make sure to at least add the link to the Uglies episode when that comes out in the description, because that was such a good conversation.
Needs to be listened by everyone.
Absolutely, it does. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining, and I would love to know, for anyone listening, what are your thoughts? What movie book adaptations did great? What were the ones that you did not care for, and why? Let us know why. That's the important part.
Yes.
Yeah. Let us know what ones we need to cover.
Yes. Yeah. Send them the recommendations. And we'll all eagerly await A Court of Thorns and Roses whenever it comes around. We'll see. But as usual, you can find this podcast on YouTube and Spotify. You can watch too as well, or just listen. And you can find me on Instagram at Busy Reading Romantasy and TikTok busy.reading romantasy, just to make it more difficult. But yeah, thanks again.